want to stand or you want to sit? Or
I'll do whatever you tell me, Colonel.
Okay. This is General Bill Lynch. He's a retired general of the
Go ahead.
12 years that we've been in here. He's probably the most high-powered speaker that we've had. Just a few things about him. He went to Brown University, graduated in 1964, got his Juris Doctorate in 1976. He's been in and out of positions of leadership for the last maybe 40 years. He was the State Adjutant General for the Pennsylvania National Guard, both Army and Air Force, and now he's transitioned that skill set to where he is up in Harrisburg, and he's the receiver. Everybody knows that Harrisburg had some financial problems. They turned to General Lynch to solve the problems, or to get around solving the problems. What we're going to do is I'm going to let General, just let me go over his military before I digress here. He's a combat pilot. He had over 100 missions, 100 hours over Vietnam. He flew a F-4 reconnaissance airplane. And then during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the conflict I was in, he was in charge of the tasking of all the Air Force National Guard units. Now, we're talking about, I think it was like 77 flying units and 200 and some odd other units. A lot of people, a lot of activity, and a lot for General Lynch to control. And one other thing before I forget it, he can fly like 7, Gio, you'd appreciate this, so you're a mechanical dude, he can fly like 7 different airplanes. F-4s, C-130s, F-111s, the F-100, that was an interceptor, right?
Yes.
So, he has been there, done it, and now he's still making a difference. So, without further ado, let's give General Lynch a round of applause.
Thanks, that's enough of that. I appreciate it. I don't hear much of that these days. Where's Nick? Where? Because I wouldn't have recognized you. When was the last time I saw you? You were 4 years old or something?
Probably.
Yeah, good to see you. You look good. Your dad's proud of you, by the way. So I'll embarrass you in front of all your friends. I've known Nick's parents for a long time, and when he was just a kid, I was moving or something, and I discovered a big box full of model airplanes that had been my father's. I'm not sure anybody had been into them in all that time. I happened to mention it to Nick's mom, and she said, "Oh, you'd like those." So we got a box of mostly broken old model airplanes. Anyway, enough reminiscing. I'm going to not really talk at you guys today. I'd rather talk with you. And I got hooked into this because your colonel and Nick's dad approached me about talking to you about leadership. And I think that's a worthy topic, and I think you all are here because you're interested in taking positions of leadership and learning how to assume responsibility and make decisions. And I will tell you that that's a rare commodity. What I see in Harrisburg, and you will observe this in other places, is a lot of us are unwilling to assume responsibility for ourselves or for what goes on around us. And very few of us are willing or able to make a decision, because that requires that you assume responsibility or take responsibility for that decision. This is a marvelous opportunity. This our junior ROTC business is really a leadership lab. It gives you an opportunity to try. You're not going to be successful all the time. It gives you an opportunity to come back from something that's less than successful. It gives you an opportunity to figure out who you are, and that's the key. It's figuring out who you are and observing others and taking what's good and adopting it and rejecting what doesn't work for you. What works for me may or may not work for you. You got to be yourself first and never lose that. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Who's in charge here?
That's a dang good question. Yeah, Cammie, go ahead and stand up. He's a sophomore.
Despite what the colonel said, you don't have to stand up, sit down and relax. What's your rank?
Sergeant first class.
Good for you. Those stripes are symbols of privilege? No, they're symbols of service. You have to take care of the people that are in your unit, take care of your soldiers, you have to take care of anybody that works for you. There's a lot of danger out here today, not here today, but in our society. It's a lot different, and I know you hear old guys like me say this all the time, but it's a lot different than when I was your age. Consequences of our actions are different. There's more opportunity for problems. So what I'm going to tell you is we're very careful about maintaining each other's privacy. Stick your nose into your buddy's business. Pay attention. Take care of them. If something's wrong, offer to help. Don't let anyone drift away and be alone when you can help. I think that's important. That's part of the uniform. It's part of who we are. You form bonds, and people like your colonel know far better than I when you talk to people about who you're fighting for. It tends to be the guy next to you. And that's important, whether it's in a combat environment or just in everyday life. Taking care of that person that you're working with or working for or together with is important stuff. So who can tell me what you think leadership is? Nick?
I guess it would be the ability to influence others to be successful.
Okay. What do you think leaders need? Ryan, is it?
Me?
Yeah.
Juvon.
Okay, sorry. Where'd Ryan go? Okay. Tell me what you think are the traits that allow a leader to be successful at what Nick mentioned, the ability to influence others.
I'd say you have to be pretty thick-skinned.
I'm learning that.
You need a certain amount of charisma, so your subordinates would like you and follow you. Have an easier time following you.
Motivation.
For yourself, or the ability to motivate other people?
Ability to motivate other people.
Anybody know how you would do that? You raise your hand? That'll teach you. It's like being at an auction. Just go ahead.
Lead by example.
Okay. Anybody else? Just go ahead.
The ability to lead others in their tasks.
Okay. What makes up that ability? Somebody said charisma. It may or may not be a God-given gift. Suppose you're not blessed with charisma. I'll ask you, here's another way of putting it. Can leadership be learned?
Yes.
You agree? And I think I agree with that. I think there are very few born leaders. There are very few people endowed with the kind of charisma that we're talking about. You see it occasionally. Former President Clinton had that secret something. You were in a group of 400 or 4. He was connecting with you, and you felt that. General Powell had the same ability. Did you ever get a chance to hear that?
I heard him speak at the War College.
Yeah, so as I did, I had the privilege one day of hearing him speak to a group of 400. I was astounded. Then later I was in a smaller group that from 5 or 6 and met with him, and it was the same kind of instant connection. However, if you're not blessed with that, then you have to work at it. And I think that's important. And somebody talked about influencing other people, motivating other people. somebody used the word subordinates. I think it's difficult to use words like that because it implies that there's some kind of division between you and the people you're working with. I think it's important to be careful not to make those divisions. And I'll give you an example in state government. I was a cabinet secretary who worked for Governor Ridge and others, and that's a pretty classy position. Yet the governor's staff had what they referred to as senior staff meetings. Now, I thought I was one of the archbishops in that organization, but I got to tell you, that pissed me off because there's an immediate exclusivity there, which is wrong. I will submit to you, you're far better off, we're all far better off being inclusive rather than exclusive. And people will gravitate to you if you can somehow include them in what you're doing. And it's best if you can include people in a decision-making process. However, if you're the real leader, you make the decision with input from others, but it's on you to make that decision, and then it's your responsibility to carry that out. I'll tell you an Iraq story. After I retired from the Air Force and the Air National Guard, I went to work. I took a job with the State Department in Iraq, and I was the chief of staff of something called the Iraq Reconstruction Management Office. And this was in 2006 and 7 when General Petraeus was at MNFI, and Crocker came in at the end of that to be the ambassador. That's how I met Ryan Crocker. And that pairing of General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker was really unusual and really nifty. Together, they were a great team. General Petraeus always gave Ambassador Crocker his due, and the other way around. It was the elements, two of the elements of national power, diplomacy and military, that really worked well together, and it was an inspiration to all of us that were there. But the director of the Iraq Reconstruction Management Office was a retired ambassador who was a great guy, smart, but his only leadership experience had been being the ambassador in a small African country with about 15 people in the embassy. So his concept of leadership or communication was to get everybody around the dining room table. And that's fine if you can deal one-on-one. You will find that you, at some point, will get to the point where what got you here doesn't work anymore. So Ambassador Saloom was his name. He hired me to be the chief of staff, and chief of staff is the guy that kind of makes the trains run on time. And he and I had a certain amount of difficulty at first because I didn't like the way he did business, and he knew that I didn't like the way he did business, and the way he did business wasn't working well. We had about 250 people all over Iraq working with us and for us. Some really sharp guys, most of them had PhDs, and they were the senior consultant was the job title to the Minister of Oil, or the Minister of Finance, or the Minister of Justice, the various departments of the Iraqi government. And I had learned some Army by this time, and I told my ambassador that I suggested to my ambassador that these folks would do anything he wanted them to, and asked him if he knew what that was. What is it you want these people to do? Hard question. So the lesson here, I think, is to define what your objective is and communicate that simply and clearly to the folks you're working with. Most people, if you can tell them what it is you'd like them to do, are quite happy to do it. They're quite happy to do it if a couple of things. If you take care of them, if you can generate a success, because literally everybody wants to be part of a success. If they can trust you. need, far more important than charisma, far more important than intelligence, far more important than athletic ability, is integrity. People need to know when you say something that they can take that to the bank. They need to know that you're speaking the truth, and we do it all the time. Colonel will tell you, you get a parachute from a parachute rigger. Is this okay, Sarge? Yes, sir, it is. That's it. You're going to go jump out of an airplane with that parachute that's been packed by somebody you don't know, because he said it's okay. In my world, you walk up to an F-4 or an F-100 or whatever. How's the airplane, Chief? Her chief? He says, ready to go, sir. And I used to enjoy every once in a while just going up the ladder and getting in the airplane without even walking around. And you know, that sets most enlisted folks back on their heels. Aren't you going to walk around it? Well, you just said it was okay, is it? Well, yes, sir, it is. Good, let's go. And that's right there, right now, 100%. I trust what you told me. Very important. And I suggest you begin to look for that in each other. And I know you do leadership exercises and many other things, drill and ceremonies. Where does all that stuff come from? It comes from each person being a part of the whole, and each person knowing precisely where he or she should be at a certain time, and taking specific action on a certain command. Everybody has to do that together. That's a form of trust. The integrity there is the person leading the formation knows where he or she's going and what's going on. Very, very basic. So I will submit to you that's number one. And I also will suggest to you, I used to collect stuff from people that impressed me from a leadership perspective. Coach of the Redskins, a guy named Joe Gibbs, who happened to be in Washington, and I became enamored of the Redskins, not because of the team, but Coach Gibbs was an astounding guy, successful in anything he did. You wonder why, what is that?